How are you, Gregory?
Hanging in there, you know, doing the best I can.
Excellent. Well, you're the only person to make it back to my YouTube channel a second time. Uh,
Woo! Repeat offender. Yes.
and so we're going to talk today about your new book and the new AP Latin course and the course you're teaching about the new AP Latin course. Uh,
Excellent.
tell us about the changes in the AP Latin. Uh, yes.
Okay. Well, it mostly boils down to Caesar out and Pliny in. Um, so Pliny the Younger, there's a group of 10 required letters. Some of them are very short, and then the longest ones are the Vesuvius letters. And then like the so-called ghost letter that's pretty famous, or at least part of it's pretty famous
Yeah.
because there's a Easter crab video. Um, and then there are some other changes in terms of like how they're weighting things.
Hmm.
They are slightly, ever so slightly, moving a little bit more towards comprehension and a little less translation. There's still a translation section. There's a little bit more sight reading than there has been in the past. And then there's this new kind of like teacher's choice section, um, which it's still kind of unclear to me how that's all going to work. But
Yes.
but yeah.
Is there any rationale given for these kinds of changes? I mean, I presume there is a rationale for them, but like,
um, yeah, that's a great question, actually. I don't know that there was like a one place that you can find an official statement like
Mhm.
we are changing the test because we just had enough of Caesar or something like that. Um, again, there were like vague nods to the idea that like, well, like the teaching of Latin is changing and this kind of thing. And I think, I don't know, right? Like, it's still very unclear to me and probably everyone, like how they picked Pliny. Did they just spin a wheel and
Yeah.
like, that was a good one? Or, um, I think they thought maybe especially the Vesuvius letters, but also the Ghost letter, etc., would maybe resonate with students better, or different things. So,
Yeah, I mean, I do think those are texts that have a lot of resonance, a lot of interest, particularly the
hmm
Vesuvius one because it connects to history very directly, and you
right,
can tie it into archaeology and different things like that.
science and all
Yeah,
kinds of stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
yes. And I mean, so this also leaves teachers in a situation where they're like, if they haven't prepared this, like, oh, I've prepared all this material for the last 20 years on Caesar. Now I need to teach something
Exactly.
else.
Well, and especially, we've done a couple of presentations, me and Jackie Carlin, um, and just sort of informally surveying teachers like, what do you know about Pliny? Like, what have you read? And it's like, yeah, lots of people have read the Vesuvius letters. Um, a decent amount of people have read the letter about the Christians,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Some people have read the ghost letter, or again, parts of it. And then maybe the hunting letter, where where he's talking to Tacitus about, oh, I went hunting and I caught boars and this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Um, and that's about it,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
those are his famous hits.
Right, exactly. I guess my own experience. I used to when I first started, I was teaching with the Cambridge Latin
Mhm.
course, and so part of the last volume has a chapter that's just like random Pliny and Trajan letters. So I had read some of those as well. Um, but yeah, he's not particularly well known. And then one thing that was important to me and Jackie, especially so Jackie Carlin, for people who don't know, is that, obviously famous for promoting the teaching of Latin, the good teaching of Latin, the use of interactive and spoken Latin in the classroom, etc. But her dissertation stuff was on Pliny. Her first monograph was called Pliny's Women, where she specifically looked at like who are all these women that Pliny mentions
Yeah.
in his letters, and what can we learn about them, and what does that tell us about Roman society, and so on and so forth. So anyway, one thing that we wanted to make people aware of is Pliny is more than just like, oh, I can find some cute, fun historical facts or like whatever. There is, in her argument, and I agree with her now, having read a lot, like um, there's sort of more to his epistolary project, right? Like, he thought of it as a work of literature that he wanted to pass on, etc. And then within the individual letters, there is quite a lot of um, stylistic and rhetorical features that appear again and again. So that he doesn't usually get credit for, right? It's like,
Yes.
oh, he has this cool story. Even the famous ones about Vesuvius, there's quite a lot going on rhetorically that can be missed in just the kind of excitement of like, oh, wow, it's a volcano. So,
Yeah, I think that's something that particularly students, I think, often not necessarily misunderstand, but when you read letters, you letter volumes in antiquity and into the Renaissance and so forth were edited and expected to be published, and so they were a production for literary purposes. It's not just we found some letters of someone's life. I mean, sometimes that's true, but
right,
particularly when
sure.
talking about, yeah, sometimes
Well,
most.
and
Mhm.
in fact, the very first letter Pliny writes kind of sets us up to think of it that way because he's like, "Oh, I just put together these letters, as they came into my hand,
Uh-huh.
whatever," which is like quite obviously not true. But for some reason, he wants us to believe that. So, the students are maybe not necessarily wrong
Uh-huh.
in getting that idea because a lot of times the authors themselves, are trying to make us think a certain way about
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
Um,
So tell us about your book. Very excited your book coming out.
Yeah. So it's part of a whole like 4 book series,
Mhm.
really. Um, so in fact, this one is already out. This is the student text, and this is just Jackie. This
Uh-huh.
is her work. So this basically has all the required letters plus 10 supplemental Pliny letters plus about 10 extra texts that we chose to kind of we call them companion texts that they kind of in one way or another connect to or go along with or enhance the experience of reading these different Pliny letters or just allow for practice of extensive reading since they will need to do sight reading, etc. And so there's the student text, which, like I said, that was Jack, and it's largely based off, again, the work that she's been doing throughout her career of reading and analyzing, interpreting these letters. It's done in a sort of Fars Aeneid style with notes and whatnot. There's a teacher's guide that goes along with that. And then there's what I did, which was the workbook, and then the teacher's manual for that with the answers, basically, right? And it's coming in around 300 pages. It's pretty big because we had all these texts, right? Like there was it's quite a lot of text in the end of the day. I guess one of the other things we've done is we've ensured that teachers have enough prose text because again, as part of the AP syllabus, they have to do a certain amount
Yeah.
of prose beyond Pliny, and so we're like, okay, now you don't have to go out looking for
Yeah.
anything. We've done all that work for you.
Yeah.
Um, and so then, when we set about it, we came up with some sort of like kind of guiding principles. As you know, we wanted to continue to push
Push.
the Latin teaching in a certain direction. So there's a little bit of that, or maybe a lot bit of that. Um, and also, it's still firmly embedded in a largely sort of traditional model of teaching, because also we had this other kind of, there's a lot of pieces fitting together here. It was like what we wanted to do, what the AP wants,
Uh-huh.
and then what our publisher, Bolchesi Carducci,
Yeah.
like the text that they've released in the past, because they have a text that goes along
Yeah.
with Virgil, which is being updated because they did slightly shift some of the Virgil curriculum as well, even though they kept him as an author. And then obviously the previous books that were for Caesar, et cetera. So, still trying to stick within their models. So kind of, putting those 3 things together, presented some challenges. But overall, I mean, the publisher did give us a lot of freedom to do what we want. And our book's not actually technically connected or endorsed in any way by the AP. We just know that that's our primary audience, and so you know, um, so yeah, like what were the kind of guiding principles was, we wanted it to be usable in any context. So yes, we know our main audience is AP kids, but you could use this in a college classroom, in a SeumasU class,
Mhm.
uh, as someone might do. Who knows? In a non-AP high school classroom, a self-studier, right? So that was one thing. We also wanted it to be that you could pick and choose, right? There's the 10 like required letters, but obviously if you're not taking the AP test, you wouldn't have to do all
Yeah.
those. And so, but we wanted it also to be sort of coherent. So that was kind of another challenge of like making it so that it has a coherence, but that also I could be like, oh, I'm going to read this letter, but not this letter,
Yeah.
and still making that work. We wanted it to focus on comprehension first. So one of the big, I don't know, controversial decisions we made early on was we decided to two things. One, every text starts with these, they're called first reading short answer questions. So as in the teacher has read it to you or you have read it. Here's some kind of broad questions in terms of like mood and theme and what kind of vocabulary is popping up, that kind of stuff. The stuff that like you or I would do
Yeah.
with our students, but is not typically necessarily done in a sort of a traditional AP book. Another thing was then we specifically separated out the comprehension questions from the grammar questions.
Yeah.
Um, Again, to give teachers the freedom to be like, hey, I really want to make sure they know what's going on, but I don't really care if they know that this is an ablative of, you know, whatever.
Whatever. That's
Right.
Italian. Ablative or whatever.
Exactly. So yeah, so that was, and then after that, it does have short answer questions that are get a little bit more into. Oh, sorry. There's often, but not always, a translation section. You pick a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then short answer questions that are usually about like kind of reading between the lines a little, like what is Pliny really saying
Mhm.
here? Okay, he's saying this, but like what does he really mean? And then usually an essay that asks you to go even deeper and,
Yeah.
like, well, how does this connect to Roman history? How does this connect to other letters? How does this connect to culture, etc. So yeah, so that's the basic kind of thing behind the book.
Great. And when is it can you buy it? Is it available now?
So you can pre-order it
Okay.
now.
Can pre-order it.
It is technically not available yet. We, in fact, just earlier this afternoon, Jack Carlin and I were on Zoom for about 4 hours going through our last edits on the proofs, etc. So literally any day now, it should be, it's been typeset, etc. We were just going through the last checks.
Yeah.
Um, my hope is, within the next 2 weeks.
Great.
Um, so yeah.
All right. So if someone was running a SeumasU class, someone who was an experienced Latin teacher who just produced a book,
Right?
right? So you're gonna run a class. You've got some people signed up already. A few spaces left.
Yep.
What's that class going to look like? What can someone expect?
That is a great question. It's a good thing I've thought about this. No, so here's what I'm envisioning it to look like. I know I've heard directly for months now, right? There's a lot of Latin teachers out there, especially AP Latin teachers, who are kind of panicking. They're like, because the syllabus was not made official until March, right? And so some schools go back at the beginning of August, so they're already back in school,
Yeah,
right? So that gave them a couple of months at most. And right,
to
these
spend their
really
summer.
helpful, right, exactly, right. These really helpful books were not out yet. So there are a lot of people out there sort of freaking out because, as we said at the beginning, right? Like maybe they haven't read a lot of Pliny, maybe they don't know him that well, or have only a sort of surface knowledge of him. So after hearing this a couple times, I said, you know what? Maybe I should be that guy, and I will, since I put in all this time with these letters and feel like I know them pretty well now, Why not share that and help, try to help some people feel a bit better about it. So my plan, my idea for the class is basically, start with a little bit of in Latin, a little bit of like overview of who was Pliny, life and times kind of thing. We took some sections of Eutropius, and they're in the book, so we'll probably start with those. You get a kind of okay, here's when we're talking about, and so on and so forth. And then my plan was more or less to go through the required letters, kind of about, for the shorter ones, one or two a week, and then, for some of the longer ones, maybe a couple sections each week, and do, about 75% of it in Latin, reading in Latin, the way I would do with my advanced students in my classroom, and then maybe the other 25% talking about okay, how would you teach this? What does this bring up to you? What is that kind of stuff? Thinking about thematic issues that sometimes are easier to talk about in English than Latin, and understanding that not every teacher who's going to teach them necessarily is going to teach them the way I do, right?
Okay.
Um, uh,
99%
but
of them will not teach you
right,
because they're
most
not you.
likely. But they, well, thank you. I'm sure you mean that in the most positive of ways. They, but they really like the experience, I think,
Yes.
of reading through them in Latin, even if they very reasonably are like, I can't do that because I haven't been practicing that for
Yes.
years the way like you and I have, right? So yeah, that's basically my idea for the class. I mean, in reality, it's you don't have to be a high school Latin teacher, an AP Latin teacher, whatever. If you just want to come and read and discuss a sort of fascinating group of letters, sure, Um, but yeah, I did have it in mind,
Yes.
that it would be geared towards people who are in that position of like, oh God.
It's August. It's the end of
Right, yeah,
August.
right, right. Like school is starting. In fact, one of the students who already signed up, she emailed me. She's like, I saw this. I signed up right away. She's like, I'm already actually back at school, but I'm doing the teacher's choice part right
Uh,
now. So push off the Pliny till we start. So, and there was, I will say, two people have already asked, like, they're like, what is there going to be a Virgil one too? I'm like, like, I didn't write that book. I don't know. Maybe ask Seamus about that. I don't know.
maybe.
Right?
Yes.
So yeah, so that's the idea of the class.
What are you most excited about, Pliny? What gets you excited about Pliny?
Oh, what gets me excited about Pliny? I I was surprised, honestly, by a lot of things. You know, uh, as I think I mentioned, I definitely mentioned, right? Like the level of um, like artistry and rhetoric, especially that ghost letter.
Hmm.
Like again, I had read parts of it in like Halloween activities and watched the Magistercraft and stuff. But if you actually go in and read the letter, um, I mean, it's fascinating on a whole bunch of levels. Culturally, the sort of famous part that makes up the Magister is really just one in three different ghost stories that he's telling. And the whole idea is he's writing his friend. He's like, I need to know if ghosts exist or not. He's like, I think they do, and here's why. But what do you think? But then in writing these episodes, they're so highly, again, crafted. And that was really, I think that was really the moment that I was like, oh, okay. I see what I see what she loves about this guy. I see what she digs about him. Um, And then, the letters to his wife are interesting because again, if you kind of pick through them, you can see a lot of stuff going on in terms of their relationship that I think pushes back against some of our sort of fossilized ideas
Yeah.
about like what was a Roman marriage and what was a Roman woman of the second century doing and
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. And then in other ways reinforces those stereotypes or whatnot, et cetera. But so that was really interesting. And then yeah, the Trajan letters are this kind of fascinating document that I think, especially reading in this particular moment, right, where it's like here's this bureaucrat talking to this autocratic leader, um, and so one of them, there's a set of the required letters that are Pliny writes to Trajan. He's like, "Hey, I got really sick last year, and I took on a doctor. I want you to give him citizenship." And Trajan's like, "Sure, whatever." And then Pliny writes back. He's like, "Oh no, I screwed up. I realized he's Egyptian, and apparently there are different rules because he's Egyptian." And Trajan's like, ugh, I really don't want to have to do this, but I already said I would, so fine, whatever. Here's what you have to do.
Uh-huh.
Um, but so yeah, that kind of like interesting push and pull between the Romans. They clearly like wanted to have a system of like these are the rules,
Yeah.
and everyone follows them. But then they still, of course, to be able to be like, well, I am rich and powerful and want to be able to do whatever I want.
Yes.
Is that okay? And that kind of, so that was really interesting too. And then there's a bunch of letters that are just about like this building is breaking down, what do I do, or how do I pay for it, or etc. So yeah, that kind of like, again, that's in some ways the way the letters have a lot of how they've been traditionally used, is like looking for like, ooh, look, this historical fact. And there are some really cool incidents where it's like, oh, here's a letter and we have an inscription that like perfectly lines up with this. So like, oh wow, okay. He's not just right, it sort of grounds it, I guess, for us. And so we included one of those in the book as well. Where you have like a letter and a sort of an inscription that essentially, confirms what it says. But that part is still fascinating, right? You can see why people were interested in those in the first place. So yeah, I don't know. Those are the things I like about it.
Great. Well, thanks very much for joining us. We'll put links to your book to pre-order and to the class in the description below. People can sign up today, and they can see you soon on Zoom.
Excellent.
Everyone's favorite
Right?
place to be.
It's been a while. I haven't taught a Zoom class in like over 2 years now. So hopefully I'll still know how to do it. But yeah. Well, and thank you for having me back again and giving me this opportunity to teach at the U. uh, I want to be like you guys know, but Saturday Night Live, right? There's like Steve Martin, these guys who've like hosted 5 times or whatever, etc. I want to be like, this frequent guest on the SeumasU.
It's achievable. That dream is within reach.
It's excellent. Not much feels that way these days, so that's all right.
The way to
All
achieve
right,
your dreams is to lower your expectations.
right. That's true.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.